Hello and welcome to Morning Coffee with Maddog Merv. We have a beautiful hot day today. Let's see what smoking things we got going on the channel, shall we?
Welcome to Morning Coffee.
Maddog Merv today.
Got our French roast this morning
Bagel.
again. I wonder I'm a big fat guy. I mean,
And then
holy
they
cow.
I always had a schmear. A schmear.
He's probably going for bagels. He's trying to steal
Oh my gosh, I can't even believe it.
I have no clue.
And I got a bunch of chores to do. Oh, who wants to do that?
I'm going to forego the shout out this morning because, well, I haven't been doing much on YouTube. I've been sick most of this week, and so I still got a little bit of a lingering cold, and I really haven't been doing a whole lot except for staying down in bed trying to get better. So no shout out today. Sorry, folks, but next week, hopefully we will. I am enjoying some raspberries from my bushes that I've got over here. They are, well, they're blowing up right now. These are absolutely delicious. I get them pretty much June through usually September. These things will just keep coming back and coming back as long as I pick them. That's the important part. I got to pick them when they're ripe, and then they give me more. So these are great bushes. I love them. I grew up with fresh raspberries in my parents' yard, and pretty much had them my entire life. So one of my favorite things in the whole world, fresh raspberries. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed that little piece that we did on Marysvale. Now, every time I go down there, which is pretty much every year, I try to look at something new and exciting that I haven't, really gotten into before. Because when I'm not down there, I'm so busy with everything else, how can I put it? I don't do a lot of studies for that area until I go down there. And when I was down there, one of the couples that was with this, we were in a very large group, a family group. And with that family group, certain members will invite like their next door neighbors, things like that. It's a great group. There's probably 50 of us this year. It was a lot of fun. Anyway, one of the couples had gone on the very first day to do some prospecting and some metal detecting. And there's a couple of ghost towns in that area, and they tried to get up to this one that I think at one point in time had like 6,000-7,000 people. It was one of the biggest gold and silver producers in the state of Utah at one time. Anyway, they got real close. They got almost to the place and ran into the blocked road and the no trespassing and all this kind of crap that we wind up running into. So they didn't want to push past that. So they didn't. But they were telling me a little bit about the town, and I had already known about it. It was called Kimberly. And it got me thinking there's probably some other ghost towns in this area that I could at least... and when I say ghost towns here in Utah, there's very few buildings in the ghost towns that we do have. There's some semi-ghost towns that have a few buildings, vacant, abandoned buildings, and then a few that are occupied. But as far as finding an entire town of just old, dilapidated buildings, that's not here. Not anymore. But what you do find is the ruins, usually the foundations and whatnot of different buildings. A lot of what happened was shortly after some of these places would close down, either the government would take over the property and just level everything, which happened, unfortunately, a lot along the Transcontinental Railroad here. The government just went in and, bulldozed everything, which sucks. Anyway, a lot of what is in that area down there is just ruins. So you've kind of left to wonder, well, what was this? And that's where you have to do the investigation, and that's how I found out about the potash mining that went on, and how it was one of the largest at one point in time in the United States. It was the largest producer during World War I. And it didn't last very long but it was very vital to the war effort during that time. So kind of some neat history. I always like to take some of the back roads. Now, growing up, my father was he was a traveling salesman. He was a mill representative for some different carpet mills, and he would go to different furniture stores or floor covering stores throughout the state. And it wasn't just this state. He had 7 western states that he would go to, and he would make these sales calls and see if he could sell them any of the new latest and greatest, carpet samples, things like that. Well, back then, a lot of the freeways weren't finished. So we had like US 89 was the main north and south through the state of Utah. And I-15, well, there was only a few sections of I-15 that were even finished. Most of those were through the city, but you get out in these rural areas and you were back on US 89. So I grew up in that kind of a world where we traveled on 2-lane blacktop a lot and got to see all those scenic, back roads. You hear about them all the time. You hear about the old Route 66, and then in the animated kids movie Cars, about Radiator Springs, and that really is unfortunately how so much of the little rural towns in the U.S. died, was when the freeway would come along and bypass these towns, and they would just dry up. Anyway, I hadn't been on 89 through that area since I was a kid. We're talking, 45, 50 years. So it was nice to be able to hop on that road and go from point A to point B. It was about 35, 40 minutes of a drive, and it was beautiful. Of course, you have to slow down through the little towns, but one really neat thing, you get to see what the towns look like. You get to see some of these like mansions out in the middle of nowhere that these ranchers have. They're just flipping amazing. I think, wow, I still wonder how that kind of money exists, living in the little shack I live in. Anyway, sometimes you'll find neat vehicles out there in the middle of nowhere because people, well, let's face it, you've got your own, 20 acres or whatever. You don't want to necessarily take your car to the junkyard. It's just easier to leave it out there on your property. And it used to be there was a lot of really neat muscle cars and old trucks and whatnot that just out in the rural country. Well, things have been picked over the years, and this one area that there didn't used to be hardly anything. Apparently, somebody had moved in, bought this land in the last decade, and there were these couple of muscle cars on there, that 69 or 68 Charger that was in really good condition, but not under a cover and not under any kind of a building, just sitting out there in the sun. Wow. Didn't have the time to stop and go investigate and talk to the people, all that kind of stuff, bother them. But it was neat to see that. And it was neat to be able to go to the wrecking yard, walk through and see, because it's a huge wrecking yard. It's hard to describe. You have to see it on Google Earth. The thing is massive. And seeing some of the cars that they had there. And then in the background of the picture, you see other cars that you forgot they even had there. And their inventory does change over time. These wrecking yards used to have some really cool old stuff. It's where I pulled a lot of the stuff out for my 72 Charger that I had, and some of the Cougars I had over the years. Now, a lot of that stuff is gone. Most of it is gone. But as you saw in the video, there's still a few pretty neat things out there. So anyway, it's always fun. And I'm hoping to get over to Colorado. I know there's a couple of wrecking yards in Colorado that I'd like to go see. So anyway, I hope that piece was something that everybody enjoyed. The Kit Hoarder Stash, that piece on the 538, that was the last piece that I did for Kit Links, I don't know, a year and a half or so ago, before I quit doing those pieces for them. They decided to go a different direction on how they were going to do their reviews, and then of course that fell through for them as well. It was something that I, at the time, had a little bit of time that I could devote to doing that for them. Since retirement, really, I just have not had that extra kind of time. And when you're doing it for free, basically, I mean, yeah, there were a few perks to it, but basically it was for free. I just don't have that kind of time anymore. So I quit doing those for them some time ago, and that was the last one that I did. Shortly after I did that video, Meng came out with the exact same kit, exact same parts layout. The only thing is they added some metal barrels. And I want to say they were about $5 or $10 cheaper than Pig Models on theirs. Now, this Pig Models kit you can pick up anywhere between $50 and $70. It just depends on where you look. Without the metal barrels, certainly I'd have a hard time paying either of those prices for it. Looking at the kit, yeah, it fits well. It looks great. It's a great representation of a 538. Woohoo! And along with the other 35th scale main batteries that they've got, that they've put out, like from the Missouri and the Bismarck and whatnot, it's a neat little collection for somebody that is into collecting, those types of things. Something I would recommend if I was into that. And unfortunately, I got too much else going on. But I hope you guys like that one. Coming up this next week, let me tell you about next week. It's going to be a little strange for me. Sorry, finishing up the last couple of berries. Woo! They got a little wang to them, but man, they are sure good. This next week, I am actually leaving town. Maddog Merv goes to Sacramento. So I'm going to go to Sack of Tomatoes. That's what I've always called it, Sack of Tomatoes. For a conference that was supposed to be held in 2020. But of course, we all remember what happened in 2020. So the conference got canceled. And I had planned at that time to make quite a little trip out of it. I was going to take a couple extra days. I was going to go to the California Rail Museum there in Sacramento. There were some other things I wanted to do as well on the way. It would have been a lot of fun. And the people I was going to go with at the time, yeah, it would have been a lot of fun. Unfortunately, 2020 came along and totally blew everybody's life out of the water. So we're finally getting back to having this event. It's a conference that is held by Healthy Schools every year, and I'm on their advisory council, so I'm going to this. I'm going to drive, so at least we'll have some road trip time in the Mustang, and hopefully we'll have some good adventures. Hopefully it's a safe time. Last time I went down through Sacramento was well over 20 years ago. I had gone to an IPMS Nationals in San Jose, California, and went through Sacramento. Actually spent a couple of days at Travis Air Force Base, and it was kind of fun to watch the there were some KC-10s that were doing touch and goes, along with the what are they, the C-17s, the big cargo planes that were doing some touch and goes. That was kind of fun to watch. My friend and I that I went with at the time had a brother that was there on base, and so we were able to stay with him, secure permission to do that back in the old days. So anyway, this conference should be a lot of fun, but I'm leaving Wednesday, be back on Saturday, meaning that I don't know that I'm going to do a kit hoarder stash this week. I just don't know that I'm going to have the time to set it up before I go. And honestly, with everything else, I think we're just going to skip it this week. But who knows? I may have something in its place. But just wanted to let everybody know ahead of time, heads up, probably no kit hoarder stash this next week. Now on the main show, what I'm trying to get finished up is a tutorial that I did back in 2018 for MRS Hobby. I did a tutorial on how to do rust effects on car models. And I've only done it a couple of times, and I've liked the results. So it's pretty simple and straightforward. I'm going to introduce you folks to a couple of new techniques that, because everybody knows about the hairspray chipping technique, you know, used in armor building and whatnot. Now this is something else that I'm going to be teaching you. So we'll see how it goes. That will be tomorrow. And then, like I said, probably no kit hoarder stash this week, just to let everyone know. On the bench right now, I am trying to finish up my Supernatural car that I'm giving as a gift to my daughter for her birthday. It's almost there. The one little problem is this is a car from the 60s. And what did cars from the 60s have a lot of? Chrome. Yeah, a lot of chrome. So that's what I am busy working on right now, is all of the trim on this car. Other than that, it's pretty much finished up, and then I got to finish the figures. So I'm hoping to do that show here in another week, but it might be a couple weeks. We'll see how things go on that. But I'm diligently working on that, and I'm trying to finish up this tutorial that we're going to have tomorrow. Hopefully that's something that you guys find interesting, and hopefully there's some techniques there that you can use for some other projects. So, well, anyway, folks, I am going to let you go and enjoy the rest of this day. Have a great week, and we will see you tomorrow for the main show.